give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is gonna go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What is going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. It's the Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst. It's the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. My name is Corey Tulaba, and we are without Albert Garbage Time Gim. So who else could we call in? The bat signal went up, and we had to call in the madman himself. It's Tyler Rucker in the building. Tyler, what's happening, dude?
I'm doing great. You know, anytime I get the bat signal when Albert's MIA, I gotta answer it. So it's been too long, Corey. It feels like I haven't talked to you kind of on the line for a minute. You know, we've mainly been texting back and forth, but it feels right. I'm excited for this one.
This is going to be a fun one because, you know, we're going off the beaten path a little bit, and we're going to talk about two guys who I think are pretty exciting, and, you know, they're in sleeper territory. One of the guys I'm super high on, have a first round grade on, but these are the fun ones because, you know, while we have gotten some preseason basketball, we haven't gotten like the real deal college stuff. We've gotten the international stuff. We've seen some like exhibition scrimmages in college. We haven't got the real thing. It's coming soon, but this is the time of the year where we could just, you know, chuck some darts at a board, try to call our shots early. And, you know, these are two guys that I think have a chance to end up on some lists. So looking forward to the episode, looking forward to breaking down some film. And we're going to start with Chase Ross from Marquette. This is a guy, I love Chase Ross. He is just a ton of fun. He's a guy that I got to see live at during the Big East tournament last year. And, you know, Marquette has a lot of dudes, and they had a lot of dudes on watch lists, including Omax, who, you know, got drafted in the first round by the Mavericks. But I left that, not only that game, you know, that was like the first game of the day. And then I was at Madison Square Garden until almost midnight watching games during the tournament. And I just kept thinking, man, that Chase Ross kid, there's something to him. So he's coming back as a sophomore, and I think he's one of these guys who can kind of break out. What are your like first impressions of Chase when, you know, I asked you to do the show with me?
I mean, we have to point out your piece that you had on NoCeilingsNBA.com. I'm kind of thrilled of the Chase. It was fantastic when you talked about how you go to games to see these guys, and we always are evaluating and going to specific matchups to have a look on guys that are getting projected to go in that draft class. But like you said in your article, Corey, like when you leave a game completely enamored with someone you weren't expecting, it's awesome. It's a great feeling because you have to get home and you're like, I need to turn on tape right away. And I think when you told me you wanted to talk about Chase Ross, I was like, of course, because you wrote a piece about him and it was awesome. But then I turn on the tape. I'm watching closely. And I think the weird thing, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but everyone always likes to say the idea of a connector is always viewed negatively. And I think it's starting to become something really positive, especially at the NBA level. And you can get these guys that teammates are going to love playing with because they're going to do the dirty work, which Chase Ross loves to do. He's an unbelievable defender, just a pest. Like some of these guys that can play elite level defense where it's almost like they're a mirror. They're shadow boxing the opponent, and they can just be all up in their airspace and kind of cause chaos on the court. And I think that's just what's so intriguing with Chase Ross is like, hey, did this in limited minutes last year. Hopefully we're going to get an extended role, even though Marquette's going to have just a really fun team to watch this year. But I think Chase Ross is one of these players that everyone's going to start getting familiar with because it's not going to take long on tape to get enamored with him.
Yeah, 100%. And you bring up the defense, and like you kind of have to start there with him, right?
Right.
You know, like it shows out immediately. He's listed at 6'5" now on Marquette's website. I think he's probably closer to 6'3". Maybe he hits 6'4", but he's super long. He's ridiculously physical. And I think the main thing that stands out about him is just like he is willing to pick you up full court. Like, you cannot breathe against him. Like, in this clip that we're playing, he's guarding Adam Flagler the length of the court, right? So like, just taking, all of this time up off of the shot clock, like, it junks up the offense. It takes you longer to get into a set. Now you might feel a little bit rushed. So he's always going to put that pressure on you. And, like, when I watched it, it really reminds me a lot of like Scotty Barnes, Florida State tape, right? Like, that was the thing immediately. Now, obviously, Scotty Barnes is like way bigger, right? Like, he's just a bigger dude. But I just love that this is a dude who's like, I'm going to guard for as long as I possibly can. And that starts with the inbound.
I think that's the important stuff that, as evaluators, as fans, that might not look like much to us, but scouts are in love with that because of what you're just saying. Like, he's running seconds, valuable seconds off the clock. And now all of a sudden Baylor's going to be sped up here. You see that on a lot of times on tape. He's just constantly up in your face. He's constantly making you uncomfortable. And because of that, sometimes guys are erratic. They're throwing passes out of bounds because you're not comfortable. You're like, get the heck off of me. And I think that's a really rare thing for him. That's just something that is all desire and heart.
Yeah. Making guys uncomfortable, right? Like, taking their space away, making them have to work for everything that they get. And when you're a guard, especially, an undersized guard, you have to be disruptive and annoying and a pest and be willing to get physical and get into a body and play with your chest. And like, he's just so good and willing to do that kind of dirty work. That's why, like, even though Davion Mitchell's offense has not translated in the way you'd hope for where he was drafted, part of that, I think, just, role. But his defense translated right away from, the jump. He went viral for guarding Steph, right? I think Chase has a lot of like similar qualities in how he guards, is utilized, but he's got better size than a guy like Davion, right? So, even here on this possession, and this is a guy that you like. I think you wrote about him in our preview today for the Big East or yesterday. He forces a tough floater here against Xavier. And, like, that's a shot that a lot of guards get to. They want to get and pull up in that mid-range and be unpredictable and use that in between. And, he does a good job. He's gapping the ball handler. He gets it, forces into the help, and, causes a tough look there.
I think it's important. I mean, a good defender doesn't need to record a stat all the time. You just have to make life difficult. You have to just get up, be right on top of them, contest. I think all of us also like show some maturity when it comes to like, okay, I don't always have to swipe down and try to go for a rejection here. Like, just getting a hand in the face, being in their airspace. I think you see that a lot with Chase. Like, there's always a role for guys that if you can hang your hat on being an elite defender, if you have a couple other areas of your game that are exciting, like, NBA teams are going to try to make it work with you because you can potentially be a glue guy, a connecting piece. Peyton Watson, young talent with the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, he has freakish measurables, but his defense is keeping him on the floor, like his ability to cut. And, with Chase, although you're saying probably closer to 6'3"-ish, he's got athleticism, he's got burst. And I just think watching him defensively, his game looks like it could take another level, which is a scary defensive player.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we break it down, his offense, it might come off where we're like, oh, he might be limited. I think he's going to see, more opportunity to do some stuff with the ball. But like, just as a baseline, like, he's kind of even at his height, just like, all right, this is a guy that you could play off ball. And you could just be like, hey, go guard the opposing team's best offensive guard, right? Like, maybe even wings, because of his strength. Like, just be a pest, guard full court, have those active hands, like, don't let anything easy, dive on the floor for loose balls. And then, you'll get your looks on offense when the ball swings your way and you can knock down shots and attack closeouts. And again, we'll break that down in a minute, but like, I just love the intensity. Like, it's a tournament game, right? Like, get on the floor, burn those knees up, right? Like, get some bruises. Doesn't matter. He's given up his body. This is the stuff that coaches love. This is, why he wasn't expected to get a ton of minutes last year as a freshman, and he played his way into a huge role. It's because of plays like this where, you're guarding so tight and you're using all of your tools and you're shadowing guys and you're willing to make sacrifices and give your body up.
I mean, there's times all the time on tape, he's on the floor. It's a tip and he's diving before the ball's even hitting the ground. It's just the instincts, and he's with the perfect coach to unlock another level of that defensive ability with Shaka Smart. And I think as you put in that piece, like not being a big time recruit is never a terrible thing. Like a lot of guys don't hit the ground running as a freshman, but a lot of guys turn into legit prospects throughout their time at the collegiate level. Like, yeah, of course there's going to be these one and dones we're excited about this year, but this is the fun stuff. This is when you see a player start to really develop their craft. And I think Chase is doing that on the defensive side of the ball. There's plenty of boxes he checks offensively, but I also think a good point you just pointed out is, yeah, he might be a little undersized, but I think he's got that lower body strength. He's got the quickness. Number of times he's switching onto players where he's holding his own, and smart team defender too. Like there's just a lot of stuff to like with him when it comes to the defensive side of the ball.
He's super versatile defensively, like even here, right? So we just showed him on the ball. He's a guy that they made chase around other guards too, right? Like he's shadowing Jordan Hawkins here, just not giving up anything easy. And then eventually, low clock, forcing him into a super tough shot. But this is what they did. They would deploy Chase on these movement guys, right? So like, we see it with Jordan Hawkins here. And then we're going to see it with somebody that you're a big fan of on the next clip that I'm about to pull up with Miles Kelly, who's a little bit bigger than Jordan Hawkins is, especially, he's got that strength that Jordan kind of lacked, right? Like that frame. And, Chase is on him. I love this here. He knows that he's a shooter. He knows he's off ball, but he's still in the right spots, fighting through screens. And then Miles Kelly's going to try to bang in the post, and he doesn't give up an inch, right? Like he's just making him work the whole way down the floor. Like he's in his stance. He's not even on the ball. He's splitting the gap there. He's just super crafty and, just super attentive. It's really rare for freshman guards to like have that kind of level of focus where it's like, all right, if I know if Miles Kelly gets loose, like that shot is going in, and he has the wherewithal to have that, keeping his head on a swivel, even though he's focused on the ball here. He knows where Miles Kelly is. He knows he can take a chance. He knows that he doesn't have to run all the way to the corner, but as soon as he makes that sprint, he's getting around that double stagger and, cutting Miles Kelly lane off and forcing him into a tough look.
You see attention. And like we're saying, this was not a guy that was expected to play heavy minutes as a freshman. This is probably Shaka Smart's bringing him in, being like, okay, we got a fun talent we could develop here, but he played his way into the rotation. He's doing this type of stuff where it's like, okay, you're coming into the game, you're taking the best guy immediately. That's your role. And that shot, like everyone could say like, oh, well, hey, Kelly got into the lane, but it's like, it's a nightmare to get there. Like it was so difficult. And I think that's just a win in itself is you have to be like, gosh, just this guy won't get off of me. And I think that's what you see with Chase Ross a lot. It's like the previous clip with Jordan Hawkins, we saw Hawkins run people to death. And there you go. Another example right there. Like Hawkins probably like, gosh, this guy's everywhere. Leave me alone. So I think it's just this is a special talent defensively. It really is. And I think there's something there. And I'll ask you, Corey, like from seeing him in person on tape, it looks like he's got some good length. So
he's super long. He looks super long in person.
And that adds, if we're talking about a lengthy wingspan, like even if he's 6'3", 6'4", but with that wingspan and strength to switch onto other positions, that counters it out. That really checks some boxes.
Yeah, I mean, here he's on Tristan Newton. He's making his life hell, right? Like, get me off of the ball, like I can,
right?
And then uses that length to get the strip. Now, the one thing that the one area I want to see him mature at as a defender, because I think it's the only thing he does where it's like, not a weakness necessarily, but he reaches sometimes.
Right.
He'll try to use that length. He'll try to gamble for steals. And he had a 3.9% steal rate and a 1% block rate. So like he's the only freshman in the country to do that. Like those numbers are insane. And but sometimes it does leave the rest of his back line in a little bit of trouble just because, you gamble. Sometimes it's not going to pay off. You're going to let guys get into the lane. Now here, it doesn't end up hurting them necessarily because Oso does a good job in help of not fouling and, making the shot at the rim a little bit tougher. But, that guard might be Damian Lillard or Steph at the next level. And, you don't want to do that to those kind of guys, but he's a smart defender overall. And I think that shows on how he rotates and how he's utilized as, an off-ball defender. I just think the kid's IQ on this side of the floor is off the charts. And, the 1% block percentage for a kid who I'm saying is 6'3", and we're talking about his length and his strength and everything, super high mark. Look at that rotation to come over and protect the rim. Like when your 6'3" guard can kind of be a rim protector, it's impressive stuff. And it's a testament to him just having that court awareness on the defensive side of the ball. Look at him pointing, he knows that he's the low man. He knows that he's going to have to come over and help on the roll, like big time stuff.
Yeah. I think one of the things I like to see with guys like this is making sure your feet are staying alive. If you get your feet set, then it takes longer for you to get somewhere. But if you're staying alert, staying bouncy, you can definitely react quicker. And I think that's another thing with a lot of these elite defenders or guys that really have success guarding on the ball is usually it's one world and then the other one might be not as impressive. With Chase, you can get both versions where it's like, oh, off ball, he can rotate, put himself in a position. He's really alert and smart. And I think that's where you start to see like, okay, there's something special here potentially because he has that intelligence on either on the ball, off the ball. He knows where to put himself in position, balancing the floor defensively. It's really good stuff for a guy that's projecting to take another step.
Yeah. And again, like this is just smart, savvy rotations. Like he's the low man, his man's in the weak side corner. He knows he can hang by the hoop. He's getting in and out of the lane. And he knows like, hey, if that ball swings to the corner, he can close out with enough time to get a good contest. And he's forcing an air ball here. So like, that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. He's not getting a steal or a block there. He's just doing his job. He's there to tag the roll, right? He's now there to get all the way to the corner to have an awesome contest. Like that is just stuff like you want to get on the floor. Like if you're watching this as a high school kid, that's the kind of stuff that you have to do. You have to just always be active and making an impact, whether you get a counting stat or not. And he's pretty good at that too. I mean, look at the hustle here. Chase down block, great timing. He's just a dog, man. And that's part of it. He just cares. He cares on every possession. And, those kind of guys, they maximize their potential.
Well, people will laugh about this clip because look at the score. He has every reason to mail this in. They're down 22 in second half. Like he has every reason to be like, okay, it's a layup. That stuff just screams on tape when you're watching that. When you take in the situation, the fact of how far behind he is in the play, and just to be like, to heck with this. Like, okay, let's go. Like challenging you right at the rim, and great timing, great anticipation. You just see this all the time. And I'm a sucker for these guys. When you told me you wanted to talk about them, it took me like 3 minutes of watching tape. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay. I'm in love now. Thanks, Corey. And the defensive guys that work their ass off to earn a spot, to earn minutes. If you have flashes on the offensive side of the ball, you can figure that out. But if you can really excel defensively, like Shaka Smart's going to find a way to play him more because he does everything Shaka Smart wants him to do. And I think NBA teams are going to be keeping an eye on this too, because how many guys have we seen just hang around the league because they can be good defenders? They can be great team pieces. And, I know we're going to talk about his offensive game too, but I think there's some playmaking stuff where it's just understanding where the ball is supposed to go and being a joy to play with. Like, this is a guy where if I'm on the court and he subs in, I'll be like, woo, okay, Chase. He's going to make the right plays. He's going to help us out. So just impressive.
Yeah.
Corey knows what he's talking about, guys. Just trust him.
Yeah. Sometimes,
Sometimes.
Broken clock's right twice a day. But let's talk about the offense. Because his game is very simplistic. I don't think he showed quite as much versatility at volume as he did on the defensive side of the ball, but that was more due to the role that he was playing on the court, I think, than it is a lack of talent. But before we get into where I think we should start with his game, which is the shooting, I have to start with this clip here because, it's maybe my favorite clip of his in general. Because as much as I love to sit and break down defense, I really love a poster dunk.
Oh, who doesn't,
And
I mean,
that's going to get you out of your seat.
Yeah, that's anger too. You're screaming at 3 a.m. watching film and probably wake up the whole neighborhood. That's just really fun. And that's also just like, speaking of reach and wingspan, like, my goodness, bringing that back, like Dominique
both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Defense to offense first.
Yes. But there's times where he just also, like, you could see the fire in his eyes when he's getting downhill. And it's not always like he's always just trying to poster everyone. Like, he will attack you and try to finish at the basket and be like, okay, let's go. Welcoming the challenge and initiating contact, not being afraid of it. There's a lot of stuff that's really intriguing. Like, I know I just said it, but how many guys, athletic slashers that could play defense, have just figured out a way to hang around the NBA level? And, this is why scouts are intrigued. And, like we always say, get rid of those preseason, like, oh, the draft class isn't good. There's guys that are going to pop up like this that take a huge step forward in their development and become, household names in the draft class.
Yeah. And I think I'm as guilty of that as anybody. I've said, the draft class is not great. Right. And I think when I say that, and I think what most people are saying is, like, there's not a Victor Scoot type guy who's been on the radar for years, right? But that doesn't mean guys aren't going to emerge. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to draft a superstar outside of the lottery, Giannis outside of the lottery, Jokic outside of the first round, Devin Booker back end of the lottery, right? Like, these guys who are phenomenal all NBA players, you can find them everywhere. Somebody's going to come out and develop. I don't know if that's Chase Ross, right? I think, with Chase Ross, and I don't know if he'll have the opportunity to quite make that Kobe Buffkin kind of leap, because I think he's got a lot of, veteran guys that are still there at Marquette, in Tyler Kolek, who I love. You have Cam Jones, you have guys in that backcourt who have been there. So he's not going to have the on-ball reps that a guy like Kobe had, but, like, these guys emerge. New role, new confidence from coming back for a second year, right? Like, so I think Chase is going to emerge with an increased role, show a little bit more to his bag. But even still, if you can get up like that, that's NBA level athleticism. And then, he's a guy that I think is going to be able to baseline be a 3-and-D guy. Now, he only shot 32% from 3 last season. It was on 1.7 attempts. So I think the volume was so low that I don't want to make too much of it. Because when I see him shoot, and he knocked down 3 threes in the game that I saw him too. But when you see him shoot, I think the shot looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that looks like a 36, 37% 3-point shot to me, especially as a guy who mostly is going to do a ton of his work off the catch. So he's a lefty shooter. He's got that high arc. I'm buying the shot. How are you feeling about his shot, knowing that, it's a 32% shot overall?
I don't get too caught up with the percentages. I mean, obviously you make note of them, but I'm making note of the form. Like, okay, does it look consistent? Does it look confident? And early on, I was like, okay, I'm buying it. It looks smooth. He looks confident with it. And like you saying, like, low volume rate, which is okay. I don't want to get too caught up on that, but I'm just buying it. It looks solid. I'm just trying to figure out, like, do we think this is a guy, Corey? Because, gosh, Marquette's just going to be so much fun this year. But do we think this is a guy that could even just make some noise if they have a deep run and be a this year guy? Or is this a guy that puts up a nice year and all of a sudden he is on every single radar as just a huge leap for his junior year? I don't know, because if the defense is what I believe it could be, I think teams will be knocking on that door to be like, no, come out, come to this class. We want to draft you. Like, we want to develop you, because I just think there's a lot developing, and it's going to be interesting to see if it comes together this year.
Yeah. I think he's going to be a this year guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that what he does on the defensive side of the ball, what he does as an athlete, and if he just shoots it at 35, 36%, I think it's like, hey, there's too many tools here with a pretty good baseline to not have him come out, because this is a guy that I think, because his game at least as a freshman, was so kind of simplistic. What a dime by Tyler Kolek, by the way.
Yeah.
Because his game is so simplistic in that kind of 3-and-D plus role, like, and because so many NBA teams have these jumbo creators, like, this is kind of like the kind of point guard you want to have on your team playing next to those guys, right? Like, this is kind of like, is there some Derek Fisher in there in role for a team if he went and played with Luka or something, right? Like, just play defense or be, knock down shots and, attack and get in the lane when you can. So I think he's going to be a this year guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not, because again, you have Tyler Kolek, you have Joplin, you have Cam Jones, you got Oso. Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed on this Marquette team, but I still think that there's going to be enough food left over, even if, he's the sixth man, that Chase Ross is going to be able to come in and still eat a little bit.
I mean, you name dropped the guy perfectly earlier that we weren't even talking about this time last year when it came to Kobe Buffkin. Wasn't a lot of, top 20 projections in the preseason, but Buffkin just really cemented himself as a legit talent, played potentially on both sides of the ball at a high level. And, I'm not saying this name lightly, but like guys like Derek White, high level defensive guards that don't have to do much offensively, but can just play the game the right way. I think there's always going to be, right now, it's a hot market for those guys. Like, when it comes to NBA teams, if you can find those, the Christian Brown at Kansas, like, he was obviously a elite shooter and someone that reminds me of another guy we're going to talk about in a little bit. But if you can play high level defense, like, he's going to hang his hat on being like, I'm an NBA defender. And I believe that he has that potential to be like, that's my elite skill as the defensive side of the ball, which is a heck of a resume already to have for teams to scout. But if he can continue to add, where even you're saying, like, if he's at 35% from three on a higher volume, it's a very intriguing prospect that might have good size for a backcourt mate with length. It's just a lot of stuff to get excited about quickly.
Yeah, and this is kind of where he's going to have to get better if he is going to be a guy who gets to 36%. Right. It's when guys are closing the gap on him and he only has a few inches of space to get a shot off. Because there's been a stark difference in his shooting, even dating back to high school, on contested versus uncontested. Last year, knocked down 38% of his unguarded spot ups, 57% of his unguarded spot ups during his EYBL 17U season. But that number goes down pretty exponentially when he's guarded. He was 26.9% last season when he was guarded, and he was 18.8% on guarded spot ups in EYBL. So he's got to get comfortable shooting it with a hand in his face, but because he's a good shooter when it's clean, but it's not always going to be clean. And, you got to make guys pay when they're closing out to you at the NBA level. Like, they're not going to ignore you if you're knocking down open shots. So it's got to get to a point where he just starts knocking some of these down, where there's a hand in his face and he doesn't kind of have to, speed his release up or alter his shot in any way.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to be, like you said, it's one thing to be open and hit down your shots. Like, yeah, everyone should be hitting that, especially at the NBA level. There's a lot of guys that are, okay, you're leaving me wide open, I'm going to be fine. But eventually you got to bring something else to the table. And if he can start improving that number to become a more consistent floor spacer, just at a respectable level, it's a huge step forward.
Yeah, 100%. Because, those jumpers, it's not just important, because you want to make teams pay for sagging off, right? Like, if a team is going to ignore you, you got to make them pay. So if you knock this shot down now, those guys have to close out on you. And when he's put in a position where guys are running him off the line, like, you want him to get into the paint to show that athleticism that we saw on the defensive side of the ball, to show that athleticism that we saw on that first poster dunk, right? When he's able to get going with some momentum and attack gaps, like, he is a devastating guy in these catch and go situations. I mean, that's a 2-hand cock back dunk. Like, he is not just a good athlete. He is a fantastic athlete with like devastating strength and power underneath those legs. So I want to see him using that shooting to open up this aspect of his game.
It's going to make his life just 10 times easier offensively, because if he hits, say early in the game, he hits a couple of 3-point shots, then you got to get up on him. And then all of a sudden, everything's just going to open and look so humongous when it comes to him driving the lane. Because, like you said, awesome vertical leaper, but just the lower body power, strength, and quickness, where like he has lightning quick feet to get somewhere in a hurry. It's just funny how fast all of a sudden it's like I always say, it's a fighter jet just taking off the runway. And you really see that with him, where he's not going up with soft intentions ever when he's attacking the lane. It is violence. It's anger. It's awesome to see. It's just kind of like, oh crap, and that's where, if he really does get the 3-point shot, just falling a little bit more with more volume and more confidence, it's going to open up things in a big way.
Yeah, because he needs to be able to get downhill. It's not enough to just be a 3-and-D guy.
Right.
I think it's even going to help the playmaking stuff, which we'll talk about towards the end, because I think he's got a little bit more than he's shown in his bag. But, I love how he does get downhill, because he is so strong. He can, handle contact. He'll go into the body, especially when he's able to get to his left. Like, he's got the length to use extension finishes. Like, he has all of the stuff in his bag. And, I love the Marquette fit, because Oso, for, you could say he's a non-shooter, but he does initiate so much here out of like the high post and, at the elbows and handoffs and whatnot. And it allows Chase to kind of play and operate as he would in an NBA role, playing off one of these bigs that NBA teams like to deploy. So I love that he can kind of get downhill and, because they have so many good passers. Like, not only that, I want to see him, moving off the ball continuously. I don't want to see him planted in the corner. I want to see him keeping teams guessing. I want to see him, used as a cutter, where again, he can get some momentum. If a guy falls asleep, right? Like, you got to make teams pay. And he does a great job of doing that here. We're going to see him. He's hanging out in the corner, helps there, up and under, shows that crafty little finish. He's got to be a versatile finisher for a guy who's not going to create a ton with the ball in his hands. There's still ways that he could do that and be effective off the ball.
Yeah, that play. I mean, those two plays are just so impressive. Like the previous one, because he just stays with the cut. He doesn't give up on it, just continues to move through. And then this one, like, showing people don't realize how hard that was. It looked impossible, and it was even harder than that. He showed that ball on the other side and then brought it down to finish on the away from the shot blocker. It's just stuff like that. Like, I think the outside shot will open up such a world in which he's becoming a more versatile offensive threat, because he does have off-ball stuff. He is intelligent. He knows where to find the lapses in the defense. And, there's just stuff like this too, where you're like, woo, like, just really impressive. So a fun talent that it's almost just like, okay, it's a matter of time before this all starts to fall together. And when it does, it's going to be a heck of a player.
Yeah, because you see when he has space, like, he's able to show that handle off a little bit more. It's broken offense. He gets to initiate a little bit because the defense isn't set, but like, he looks shifty here, getting downhill. And sometimes he could, in the half court, he's trying to create for himself. He looks a little bit more stiff, but a little like in and out, the hesitation, change of pace, put the jets on, and then again that extension finish. I mean, it's really fun stuff. And this is the type of stuff that I'm like, all right, there's more for him to unlock. Now, a big aspect that I think he needs to kind of make a part of his game is the floater. He needs an in-between game. And because I don't think it's going to be a mid-range shot. That's not going to be his role. But he does need to, kind of knock down these floaters. Now he has that high arcing release. I think he's going to have touch, but he just didn't go to it a lot last year. So it's hard to say that he has it. I think if he, tries to utilize it, it'll be effective for him, but he really needs to make use of it. And not even so much. I mean, obviously it helps because it makes the defense think like, is this guy going to get to the rim every single time? Like, that you become predictable if you do that. And, he can't be predictable in his role. It can't be a shot or, an attempt at the rim. It's got to be a kick out. It's got to be a floater. This floater, if he utilizes it correctly, it reminds me, of why Trae Young is so effective. It reminds me of why Emmanuel Quickly has been so effective running pick and roll. And he looks super smooth running the pick and roll here, right? Throws that lob, beautifully executed pick and roll. And it's stuff like this that I'm like, all right, so his assist percentage was really low because he did not have a ton of opportunity to play with the ball in his hands. 7.4 assist percentage. Now he had a positive assist to turnover ratio, which is good. But if he gets that floater, now this is a devastating play because now the big he might have to come up earlier and you might get even more room on the roll, and he might be able to make something like this happen even more often than he does. And hopefully we get to see that with an increased role because I do think there's some playmaking stuff. He makes, he's willing to move the ball. And he's able to kind of make like high feel reads with good touch. This goes back to him knocking down shots and that catch and go to the rim, where we saw him throw that monster poster dunk. Well, here, Jordan Hawkins got to close out. He's able to attack and a little drop off. Like that is a pretty slick pass for a guy who didn't do a lot of playmaking. So there's not a ton of evidence to show that he can do it, but there's just enough with enough good decision making where I'm like, all right, I think there's more that we're going to see this year.
Yeah, I felt the exact same way watching is like, okay, there's a limited sample here, but there's the right flashes in which you start to say like with more minutes, with more touches, there's something else here. And I think what you're pointing at is like a full off season is going to really show like the mindset when it comes to like, okay, how hard you've been working, where are you developing? Because now he's got to figure out the in-between game. Obviously we're talking about like, okay, if the 3-point shot starts to fall, well, yes, that's a big deal, but he needs something else. You got to find something else because yes, athletic slasher, we get it. Can finish at the rim. He can jump out of the gym. But you have to have something else in your game. And of course, he's probably working on the outside shot in the off season, but can you find one other area that all of a sudden really just starts to make you a nightmare to deal with offensively? We know what a pest he is defensively, but offensively, where can you add another area to be a headache? And I think you're right on with the floater. If he could add that to his arsenal, and then the 3-point shots coming along, now you're starting to get the ingredients coming together in a really nice way.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really excited to see how this year plays out for him. And this Marquette team is going to have a deep run. I think he's going to get some notoriety off that. It's going to be really fun. Let's take a quick break, and then we will come back and break down Connor. How do we say it?
Essegian? I don't know. You said it right.
We'll come back after the break. All right, we're back to break down Connor Essegian.
Essegian, I knew it. The moment I said it, I said Essegian. From
Wisconsin. A 6'4", offensively focused guard who's a lot of fun. I'm going to get a chance to see him up close, in person, live this year. Can't wait for that against a tough Rutgers team at Rutgers. Jersey Mike's Arena places an absolute madhouse when they're rocking. It's just a bunch of drunk New Jerseyans, college kids, like old alumni, just rowdy, wild, drunk New Jerseyans. So I can't wait to watch that. Let's start it out similarly to how we started out the Chase Ross portion. What did you think of Connor when I mentioned that he was one of the guys I wanted to cover today?
I was like, who? And then I'm not trying to make fun of this. It's when Corey throws me a name out of left field, I'm like, oh gosh, what are you seeing? Like, what did you find? Like, come on, you're onto something. Cause there's just a lot of guys at No Ceilings. When they ask me about someone, I'm like, what did you find? Because it's so hard getting ready for college basketball. And all of a sudden with NBA season, like someone's going to slip through the cracks. And when someone brings up a name we haven't discussed, because we talk about 20 prospects a day, it's like, okay, what's the story here? And all of these, to be honest, I was very excited that it was a player from a team that I hadn't really focused on. So I was like, great, new blood, fresh meat. Watched him. I was really intrigued, really excited. I was like, one of those weird situations, Corey, where I feel like you like the numbers and then the numbers didn't back up what I was watching. Like his let me explain. Okay. First 15 games, because I was running stats. 0 starts in the first 15 games. He played 22 minutes a game, averaged 10, 2, and almost 1 assist, 45, 45, 95 splits. I was like, you have my attention. 7 field goal attempts a game, almost 5 3-point attempts, 1.6 free throw attempts. His last 20 games, 19 starts, 31 minutes, starts to earn his spot. He averaged almost 13, 4, and 1, splits 37, 30, 85, which I was like, huh. But then I go look, huge uptick in field goal attempts, huge uptick in 3-point attempts, free throw attempts went up too. That's where I was like, okay, this guy can shoot. Like the form is pretty consistent. And I was like, this could be something. But I was like, he looks like a better shooter than ending the year in his last 20 games, 30% from deep. But I think it's because the role got expanded. He's needing to take more attempts. So watching it all, I was like, oh boy, this is a name now that is firmly on my radar because there's just a lot of stuff to like. I hope I'm not crazy. I hope that's why you're bringing him to the table.
That I don't think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Now you talk about the shooting because I agree. I think the percentages are a little bit lower than you might think, right? Like the percentages are still good. Let's be very, very clear about that. And the eye test, and we're an eye test group here. We love ourselves some stats, but we're an eye test group. But you look at the 40% from the field, the 35.9% from the line, and then 88.4% from the free throw line, which is just that to me is when you're in like the 90% range for free throws. It's like, okay, you're a real deal shooter.
That's a big number. Yeah.
Yeah. But even still, even with those struggles and the inconsistency, which is normal from a freshman, right? He's one of 3 freshmen since 2008. Okay. To shoot over 56% from the rim, at the rim, over 85% at the line, and over 35% from 3 on 12 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. The other 2 guys, Brandon Miller, pretty good. Went number 2 in the draft, having an incredible start to the year. And Gary Trent Jr., who's been a very good NBA player. So this is a kid who he gets the shots up. It looks pretty. It went in enough that even with some of the end of the season inconsistencies, still managed to have great numbers overall. And the fact that he can finish on top of the shot is what has me, optimistic about his outlook. Now we'll break down his game, and then I'll kind of pose you a question at the end, based off, a white guy to white guy comp that I have for him. Which we all knew was coming. We all knew that was coming. All right, so let's break down his game right away. We're talking about the shooting, right? 3-point shot. This is a kid who can do some stuff with the ball, but he breads his butter in an off-ball role. And this is a kid who he is just going to be a legit floor spacer. You cannot leave him alone. If he shoots it, you think it's going in. And there is a hand in his face here. There is no separation. And that thing just drops to the bottom of the net, splashing, just absolutely beautiful. Bang. Like Mike Breen, give me one. Beautiful. So right away, you got to feel confident that, like, all right, this kid is going to at least open up your offense off the ball as a spacer, a guy you could stick in the corner. But as you know, if you watch him, he is not a kid who just, like, he has to just stand still to knock down shots. You know, the part of the appeal with his shooting is that he's never not moving. You know, he's always in constant motion. That's tough. I love it. And it's so hard to guard because he could finish at the rim, and he uses these start stops and change of directions and, you know, little like, just leaves his defender on the floor and knocks down a tough shot off movement with a quick release. I love shit like this, man.
The movement stuff to be just all over the place, and then when it's time to go up, you're just compact, consistent. I mean, it took like 3 clips for me to just be like, oh, finally a shooter, like just finally some tape on a young shooter that I could get excited about, because I mean, I wrote natural. It just looks so natural. It looks the way you know, if I could design a shot, I'd be like, can you just give me this looking shot? Like, this looks great. But I think it's what your point at is the off ball stuff. He's not going to wow anyone athletically, but I also think you can wow people with your footwork, your understanding of where you need to get, what you need to do to sell people. Like, if you could be a salesman off the ball of like, I'm going here, just kidding, take a couple steps back, I got my shot off. Like, that's all
what he does here.
And that's exactly what he does. And every draft class, we get so excited about all these guys that are, you know, the high flying athletes, the defensive versatility, the one and dones. Then the shooters come out of nowhere, and teams take notice because you always need to find shooting now with the modern NBA. And I think, yes, there's guys like this where you're like, well, he's not the greatest athlete, but it's like, yeah, but he's going to be a headache to deal with on the offense side of the ball. And that's where, like, I saw first couple clips and I looked at the numbers. I was like, that number doesn't match what I've seen already. And then you're just hooked and wanting to watch as much as possible. But there's just a lot of stuff that I think makes up for, you know, is he an elite speed? Is he an NBA athlete? And it's like, well, that's the same type of conversation we had with Luka, where it's like, well, could he keep up with the speed? And it's like, if you have great feel and great understanding of where to get to your spots and high efficient shots, I feel like you can just do serious damage.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, he's so good at, like, even like here on this possession, like he's going to go set this back screen and fake the screen, right? And it just throws the defense off enough to that split second of confusion. For a shooter like him, it's all he needs. It's that split second, right? But like, this is the kind of Steph Curry stuff where like they use Steph as a screener off the ball so he can disrupt it, you know, the set or the defense. Because you don't know, like, is the screen really going to come? Are we switching? When do we switch? Like, there's so much communication that goes into it. So it's just beautiful stuff. You know, here on this clip, basic, nice little Spain pick and roll, but like, this is a set. Every NBA set, you know, turns into this at some point almost, right? So like, he's already got that off ball NBA skill set. And I think what we see, or what we want to see from one off season to the next, coming from a guy like this, is, all right, we saw the potential. We see that clearly you could shoot it. We want to see a little bit more consistency. And if we see that, I mean, his numbers are going to go through the roof because he's already done stuff that's really hard to do that not many shooters have been able to do at the college level over the last 15 years. He's already there. So with an off season of training, with an off season, not only of basketball training, but of hopefully getting stronger, which is definitely something he needs to do, especially when we talk about the defense. But that confidence, that consistency, knowing, hey, I'm probably going to be the guy this year. right? Maybe his role even expands to doing stuff with the ball in his hands. This is where he gets really, really interesting to me.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said before, when you're running the numbers, like this is a guy that wasn't even starting. He's playing 22 minutes a game for almost the first half of the season, and then all of a sudden they realize from just looking at the box scores, Wisconsin quickly realized we got to play this guy, and he ends up starting 19 games. Minutes go up by almost 9 minutes a game. That tells me they're very confident in him moving forward, and this is where you really get excited about a guy that's going back for another year, because you're like, there's a potential leap here in which I'm like you need more consistent. I'm with guys like this. I'm like, show me that you're a jerk on the court. Like, have that takeover ability. And it's funny you bring it up the Michigan game right now as we're watching. I think he averaged 24 a game in 2 Michigan games against Michigan. So Michigan was probably like, this guy's a top 5 pick. Like, he was just had his breakout games against them, but it's just a smart player with a good looking shot that it's exciting when you have this foundation, because you're like, okay, what else are you going to add to the bag? What else are you going to bring to the table? Because if there's another area you can bring, I mean, what is that Buffkin guarding him right there? Or
Yeah.
no, it's not. But
No.
yeah, sorry. It's just exciting. Like, this is really one that I was like, damn you, Corey. Like, halfway of my film, I was like, damn man, you got me pumped about another guy. And there's just some good feel stuff that paired with that shot makes it really fun.
This is a really, really crafty, getting into like some of the mid-range on-ball stuff, because I think this is the next level for him this year. Is this more of this on-ball scoring. This is a really, really crafty operator. Like, patient, right? He's going to come off this screen and just get into the body of the defense here. So he's going to come off tight, knows that he's got his defender on the side, dips the shoulder to create that space, and a little quick hop step to get to his spot in the elbow to make it so that his defender cannot contest him. So even that's good defense. It's just better offense. And this is a freshman who ran that ball screen. Like, that is a really, really impressive possession. So can he show more of that, right? Because if he can, now we're talking about a guy that I think is really going to fly onto some radars, because, he's shown himself really capable of doing stuff as a shot creator in the mid-range. Like, he's shifty, right? He's got the fluidity. This is a beautiful step back jumper, confident, right? Like, against a defender who's up in his stuff. And imagine now an offseason of strength here, right? Because he loves to dip his shoulder in. He's somebody who is fine with the physicality of somebody all up on him. He's okay with having contested shots. That's pretty. That's a pretty mid-range shot right at the elbow, a spot that he's comfortable in. So I want to see more of it. Like, he maybe did a little bit too much of it wasn't as effective. I want to see him do this to where he can actually be as effective as I think he's capable of being with this offseason of development at the college level.
I mean, those are NBA moves. Both of those you just showed, those back-to-back clips, are NBA moves. They don't look like much, but that's showing me the ability of, all I need is a little window. All you got to do is give me a little bit of light, and I can get my shot off, and good release, good, balance, foundation. Guys like Jason Tatum and Paul Pierce. I'm a Celtics fan, spoiler alert. But like, coming out, it was like, oh, do they have this athleticism as a wing? But it was like, they have unbelievable footwork to put themselves in position to get these type of looks. And if you're now this crazy 3-point shooter, as we're projecting, he just takes a leap and is more consistent, but you can do this now in the mid-range. And like Corey's pointing out, like an off season of building on your body and adding to your frame, you could put this also, and you're like, okay, now this lethal outside shooter is turning into a multi-dimensional scorer. And there's some stuff around the basket that I know you've hinted about that is just checking boxes. Like, this is where you get really pumped. This is why we love guys returning to school, because you improve on your game and put yourself in position to have success potentially at the NBA level.
Yeah, he does have the stuff around the basket. Like, he was a good finisher, and for a guy who is pretty ground bound. You know, I think he had one dunk this year, which is not a great stat. He's effective at the rim, and this is a perfect reason why. It's because he is so damn effective at moving off the ball. He never stops moving. Like it looks like he's doing cardio out there for the first, 15 seconds. Doesn't get the handoff, doesn't stop moving. He's going to go right back around the wheel, hop, and then the up and under, like crafty jelly on it. Like this, I love this possession so much because, I was a guy when I was playing, like I needed to move around, especially as I got a little older and a little slower. Like and it doesn't matter. You don't have to be sprinting to your spots. You just got to know when to make that change of speed, change of pace. And he's just so good at finding the angles and constantly moving. This is one of my favorite clips from him. Just it's everything you want to see to get to the rim. He's so good at this hop step and then the up and under. Beautiful.
There's guys like this on tape, which I always laugh because you're watching them and you're just like, how does he always get open? How is he always getting his shot off? Because you're like, he doesn't look like he has elite speed. He's not an elite athlete. Like, how can you not keep up with him? But I think that also just goes to show you the feel, the brilliance of like understanding. I'm a big believer of like, hey, you can have tight window burst, explosive, and really, if you understand how to use that with your hesitations and stuff, it can counter the concerns about not being an elite athlete. I know I brought up Luka, and I know he's an outlier, so I don't need people to roll their eyes, but I'm just saying you can see examples of that with guys where it's like, if you know where you can navigate quickly, like this is a great clip. Like, this is awesome. Like getting somewhere, you can see that extra little burst when it's like after that hop, like he can really get somewhere. So it's just footwork, anticipation, feel. Like
the footwork is sick.
Yeah, footwork's great.
Possession. I mean, like when he comes off here, the like hop step, he's gonna land right left it. And then, that's why the defender's late, even though he's not throwing it down, right? The defender's too late. And it's because he does have that great footwork and he's comfortable in the air and avoiding contact there. Here's more of this movement, right? And I this clip, like he's so crafty, man. He's so crafty because you have to play him that you think he's going to come and come off for the shot. So you have to get up a little bit and then he's able to, and look, he gets into the body. He uses change of directions, change of speeds, gets you up and down, and you don't want to foul him. So you don't exactly know when to contest it. It's very nuanced and very mature for, a kid who was a freshman in college. I mean, like that's how you avoid not being the best athlete, like, and still finishing at a high rate. You have to be crafty. You have to know how to get to different spots at different speeds and know that it doesn't matter how athletic the guy chasing you is. As long as you dictate the possession, you're going to be able to get off your look.
And I don't want everyone to be like, oh, it's not that easy. No, it's not that easy. If you're going to be a guy like this type of player, you have to have elite footwork. You have to, and like as impressive as these flashes are, he has to even get way better with the footwork this year because you have to be able to sell people. You have to be able to sell every defender that you're going somewhere where you really don't want to go. Like and that extra step, like stuff like that with the feet and hesitations, I will always buy into those guys over the elite athletes because you're figuring out how to get open. You're figuring out how to sell people on body fakes and hesitations. And it's high feel stuff for a lot of those guys. And that stuff's just special for freshmen. That's all of a sudden coming into his own. Like you add an off season, we could be cooking with something. We could be really, really moving with something.
We can be cooking. We can be cooking.
Be cooking.
Look at this. I mean, again, it's simple. Like he makes complicated look simple. You said like, oh, it's not easy, right? It looks easy though.
Yes.
And it's stuff that like all your coaches want to, like, this is what your coaches want. They're like, it's so easy, just do it. Like he's the guy who does it, right? Like, and because he's so good at moving off the ball as a shooter, it opens up opportunities and lanes for him in ways that it won't for other guys. But he looks like he's coming over for the shot. now his defender's behind him and chasing, and he's at the rim and he's finishing with touch, and he's got good touch at the rim. So I love it. Like now we keep talking about how, this is a guy, oh, he's so crafty, he's scoring, and he's this ground bound guy and it's all craft. Well, sometimes that doesn't always play out the way that you want, and he's going to get his shit sent sometimes.
Right.
And that's the thing that and that's the thing that people I think are going to struggle with his evaluation, and I think rightfully so, that you have to decide, like, for as many times as this might happen where he gets blocked because he doesn't have that burst and vertical pop, is all the other stuff that he does going to allow him at the NBA level, where it's not a bunch of college kids doing it and it's the best defense? It's Jaden McDaniels coming over, right? Like, you got to do this against Jaden McDaniels. And, there's a great defender on every NBA team now, like, can you do that against Torrey Craig? Right? Like, so that's going to be the question. The athleticism is most certainly something that I think, rightfully so, people are going to have questions about, but there's a ton of guys in the league that don't have that vertical pop and are still able to get to their spots. And, that's kind of going to be the thing that he has to show. Can he get to his spots or not? And so there's that question. And then here's the other question. Are you buying him as a playmaker?
I mean, I need to see more.
I need to see more.
It's just tough because, like, there's stuff like that, and I've watched the playmaking, and I've seen some stuff where I'm just like, this is a good feel. But it's the same thing we just talked about with Chase Ross, where it's like, I need more consistency. I need him to have the ball in his hands more opportunities. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he, synergy wise, like, pick and roll was like a very high number, but it's a high percentile on a low volume. So you're like, well, okay. But you're just like, okay, I need more reps because there's really intelligent stuff like that flashes. Yeah. And maybe that's the other area that gets unlocked that we're like, whoa, okay. Because what you're saying earlier, Corey, is like some of those defensive clips where guys are all over him, you can guard him unbelievably for 90% of the time. But that last 10%, it's all over because he takes advantage of you, and he's such a good shooter. You have to be all over him, and he knows that. So that opens up cuts and stuff. But I just am buying stuff like this of like, okay, that's not fluky stuff. That's good feel, anticipation. There's something to grow there.
There is. I agree more. And I hope that he gets to play with the ball in his hands as a creator more. Now, some of this is going to be on him, where he can't look to be a play finisher every single time, right? Like, is that going to mostly be his role at the next level? 100%. The thing that you do like, while his assist percentage was only 6.1%, and that's really low, his turnover percentage was 8.9%. So this is not a guy who's, throwing the ball away and getting too crazy, and that's why he's not a good playmaker. But you see the clip, like the last clip, where he comes off the movement and the big has to switch out to him, and this opens it up for the roller. You see this clip where, again, he's going to come off, a ball screen, the change of pace, plays two and hits the roll. Like, you have to be comfortable coming off and playing with the ball in your hands to run this as smoothly as he did. Like, he looks like he is, a third year junior point guard here running this ball screen. I mean, just that step, that slight step there is something Brandon Miller was really good at. Instead of coming off and just getting downhill, he cuts that. He like karate kicks his left leg out to get over the screen and create that space. Now he's got two. He sees that the tag isn't there in the paint, and he drops it off. That's a smooth possession as a ball handler. So, like, all right, he didn't have a ton of assists, but he knows how to pass. Like,
yes.
The feel, it's just something that you have to see with your eyes. And this is the last playmaking clip that I'll show that I was like, all right, like, okay, this might be a set play. Like, he might know that back screen is going to come and he can hit the cutter, but he leads him to the spot, and the timing of it is phenomenal. So I see stuff like that, and I'm like, all right, please let me see more, because I think that this kid, not only is he going to take a leap as a shooter on and off the ball. I think that he's going to use the threat of his scoring to make plays for his teammates. And then I think people are going to lose their mind over him.
I think the biggest word you said, and it stands out in so many aspects of his game, is timing. He just has some moments where you're like, that had to be at the perfect time, and you just keep doing it. Like it's either a big dive in or something where it's just like the window is small, and if you time it too early or too late, it's not going to be there. Especially like it can either be with him driving or cutting, but then you see stuff like this, like, yeah, that could be a set drawn up. Probably is. But that is trust with your freshman to be like, you're running it, you're throwing this dime over the top. Like, I had to be in the perfect location for your teammate to get it. It's just a lot of high field stuff. And I think timing and the footwork, the understanding, like the previous clip you showed, when he's coming off that, a lot of young guys would just come straight and stay the same speed. He stops, which you said, like Brandon Miller was so good at that. He stops to get both guys to come with him, bring him with him. And that creates that pass. And I just think guys like this, high feel, intelligent, work to get, advantages. Like I just really, really buy into. And this is one of those guys where the more you watch, the more you start saying like, okay, this could be really fun. This could be a really fun talent. Just a high IQ player.
Now let's talk about the defense.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Because I talked about he's got to get stronger for a number of reasons. This is primarily the reason. I think that the defense has to get to a baseline level where an NBA team's not going to be like, as soon as he comes in, he's going to get bullied and picked on.
Yes.
Because that is what is going to stop this kid from being a first round pick. Is the question is going to be, hey, can you defend? Because if he answers it and the answer is yes, I think he could be a first round pick. If the answer is no, then maybe you take a shot at him in the second round, or maybe he's a guy that is like an undrafted free agent, or he stays at school. But, all right, short, choppy feet on the closeout. That's great. Shadows him. But the slightest bit of contact, and he's getting pushed off his spot here. And again, this is a college kid. What the hell is going to happen if Kawhi Leonard dips his shoulder into you? That's the reality of the situation. If he's in and he's playing the Clippers, you're going to have 4 guys that are like, oh my God, I can't wait to get this 2 points. So he needs to prove this because, and this is a bigger wing that he's guarding here, right? So you're like, all right, well, maybe he's just not super switchable, but, let's watch him guard Kobe Buffkin here, who is pretty slight in himself. Kobe hits him with dips the shoulder a little bit, and then, crafty little step back, and Connor's overcommitting just a little bit. But, these are things that he's really going to have to work on this year and prove. And, if he is taking that step up offensively, then you have an even bigger load, and now you have to work even harder to just become an adequate defender. So this is what we need to see. I think he's competitive. So I think he'll step up to the challenge, but I do think it is going to be a challenge. It is a legit question for him. So, one last clip. And we're going to see he's going to get switched on to now Denver Nugget Jalen Pickett. And we know what he likes to do. He likes to back guys down, and that's what he does here. And there's just no resistance, right? Mm-hmm. There's not really a pushback. There's not trying to bump him off his spot. He's just kind of letting Pickett dictate the entire possession. And he's close enough that he should just be using that chest to push him back, and he's just letting him back down. And yeah, he misses the shot, but there's got to be more resistance. So these are the little things that I need to see from him to fully buy in as a prospect, because I want to so freaking bad.
I get it. The crazy thing is, and people would say I'm insane, but like that first clip I almost love, because if I was a coach, you'd start that before the offseason. You'd show that clip and be like, you were great here, but this is why you need to be in the weight room. Because it was good. Like he closed off, he got his hands up, he had good fundamentals, chopped his step.
Sure.
But it was a clear, this is why you've got to live in the weight room. And I'd just be putting that on loop because of the like, guys are going to do this. You have to add some strength to be able to hold your own. And the Kobe Buffkin clip you just showed, I think that was one where like, okay, his feet getting crossed. You got to stay with the fundamentals. But here it's like, he's fine. It's just clearly like you got to build your strength. And I'm right there with you. A guy like this that's so talented and the upside is so awesome offensively, you can't have a target on your back. That's the only thing I would say. I'd be like, we love what you do offensively, but you cannot be a prospect that is like the moment you step on an NBA floor, you have a target. If you can come in and be a good team defender and hold your own to a average level, I'm right there with you. I think he could be a first round pick from what I've seen. But a lot of stuff's got to happen. A lot of stuff's got to go in the right way. And for what it's worth, Corey, like when I was watching him off the ball with team defense, there's stuff I like a lot. There's stuff where it's his IQ continues to stand out, the vision, the anticipation. But, you're also, let's just put it out there. You're also going to be the white guy that every single team's going to be like, hey, we're going right at the white guard, because that's just how it is. Like, he's not an elite athlete. You got to prove yourself at the next level. And I think there's a path in which he could really become a heck of a player. Could it happen this year? Absolutely. Could it be a guy that sends a statement this year and is on the radar and goes back for one more year of fine tuning after he gets, some feedback? Maybe, but talented player for sure. And one to get really excited about.
Yeah. Now, I think the big thing that we need to figure out here is like, is he going to be perceived as like, hey, like this kid could be Tyler Hero? Or is he going to be perceived as like, maybe he could be Sam Merrill one day? And I don't mean that as any disrespect to Sam Merrill, who I think is awesome and is going to find himself a role on a playoff team at some point. And Sam Merrill, as a college player, he was Mountain West Luka. Like, he did everything for his team. But he was a 4-year guy. And, like, is that the path for Connor? Is he going to be that multi-year guy, or does he get that offense to a point this year where it's like, and he's playing in, the Big Ten, and teams are just like, all right, this is a guy who has the feel and that versatile offensive skill set that he can complement what we do. And yeah, maybe he's got to mature physically, but we'll get him in our program. Or is it going to be like, all right, well, I don't know if his offense is quite good enough yet. And, he's more of like that G League guy bouncing around until he finds the right spot at a certain point. That's kind of what we're going to have to figure out over the next, 8-9 months, whatever it is.
I mean, does he need to just spend like 5 hours and someone lock the door and he just watched JJ Redick from Duke? Or is he too slow for that? Because the Sam Merrill one, everyone's going to be like, oh man, that's a slap. And it's like, no, Merrill was a damn good player. He also was awesome.
Sam Merrill was a better player than Connor is. Like, and especially by the time he left. But like,
Merrill was awesome at Summer League. We were laughing our butts off in the stands about how good he looked. So it's just, but that just shows you the challenges. You have to have everything fall into the right place. But for a freshman that wasn't on a lot of radars to all of a sudden kind of cement himself, like, this is what we love, Corey. Like, when we start to see guys all of a sudden cement themselves as like, this is a name on the rise. We don't know if it's going to happen right this year, but it could. And we've seen guys like this all of a sudden get hot, or really the confidence starts to build, and a full offseason just unlocks another level that we weren't expecting. And that could happen. But I'm right there with you. It's a fun talent. We just need to really see if that next step happens.
Yeah, he's intriguing. I think there's a good shot that it does. I'm going to lean optimistic because it's the off season and we like to have fun here. Yes. All right, Rucker, tell the people what you got going on. I know you've been cooking some stuff up behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm debuting a video breakdown piece for me. It's called Tape Time. First one's I'm gonna be doing NBA players, young players, and then NBA draft prospects. Starting off with Asar Thompson, so I'm uploading that. Hopefully that'll be up before the weekend. Maybe by the end of the weekend, we'll see. And I think the next one's going to be the big man in OKC, Chet Holmgren. So I'm really pumped about that. Been working hard, and then I'll have an NBA piece for NoCeilingsNBA.com for all of our No Ceilings Plus subscribers. I'll have a NBA piece talking about young players getting ready to take the leap in this upcoming season. Some stuff that I've seen early on that I think they're trending in the right direction in a hurry. So working my ass off. But no, I know we got a lot of fun stuff going on behind the scenes. Corey, what do you got going on? You're cooking up some stuff too.
Yeah, cooking up some stuff. I think if you are listening to this on the podcast feed, I think that I'm going to have an Alex Sarr film sesh available exclusively to No Ceilings Plus subscribers early. So we'll have, if you have No Ceilings Plus, you'll get the Alex Sarr film sesh a couple of days early, and then it'll go up on our YouTube channel. So I got that I've been working on. I'm really excited to be back with the film sessions. I can't wait till we get some college films so I could break down those guys and we could start picking that up. I think I'm going to write about Connor for the site and break down his game in words. So, if you listen to this, then you might be interested to see that breakdown as well. And, we're always cooking other stuff up behind the scenes. I know me and a couple of buddies, my guys Joe, who congratulations to him for winning. He wrote the Song of the Year, Jelly Roll. Need a favor. Just won a major award. Wouldn't worry about it. Probably going to win a Grammy this year. So we and my friend Larry, we all started an NBA podcast called Bucket City. So search that up and listen to that. It's a circus where we just talk about the NBA and make jokes. So that's kind of fun because it's been a while since we talked about the NBA. And then we got something coming down the pipeline for No Ceilings that I'm excited about video-wise. That's going to touch on, some NBA young guys, some college stuff that really, really excited for this show as well. So we got a lot of stuff coming down. And as always, everything on No Ceilings remains free that you are accustomed to over the last 2 years. With the launch of No Ceilings Plus, though, if you have it in you to support us in any way, you're just getting bonus stuff. That is some of the NBA content that Rucker said. You're going to get my video breakdowns before they're released to the general public. You're going to get access to our personal big boards. You're going to have video meetings with the No Ceilings team, roundtables. You want to ask us questions, whatever it is. Basketball, life, we got you. You got the preseason draft guide, which we released last week. If you're a No Ceilings Plus subscriber, you can get that. That access is opened up for you. You have access to our private Discord. You're going to get a merch discount. And I think even maybe some exclusive merch colorways as well. So a lot of good stuff for No Ceilings Plus. It's $8 a month or $80 for the year. So if you can support us in any way, we appreciate and love you. And if not, we still appreciate and love you and, hope that you continue to consume all of the content that we give you for free, because that's what it's there for. It's to be consumed and shared. And, we're super appreciative of everybody, whether, they're a Plus subscriber or not. Like, you guys allow us to do what we do and grow the way that we have. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this live or on replay, and smash that like button. And make sure that if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, that you rate, review, 5 stars, all that good stuff. Until next time, we are out. Peace.